Alright, today we're going to be replacing rotors and pads on a 99 Jeep Wrangler. Tools you're going to need a jack to jack up the Jeep, you need jack stands to put underneath it while you're working on it, you need a breaker bar to break the lug nuts loose. Lug nuts on this particular vehicle are 3/4 inch. Remove the caliper. Later on, you'll see all this later. Remove the caliper, you're going to need a 13mm wrench. Need a C-clamp to compress the caliper after you remove the pads, so you can put the new ones on because they're going to be a lot thicker. Rubber mallet can be useful for removing the caliper, and you got some brake cleaner to clean up the new rotors. Start working with your calipers or compressing them to fit the new pads on. What you're going to want to do is to find your brake cylinder under your hood. Find the reservoir and loosen the cap so that when you're compressing the pistons for the calipers to fit the new pads, you're going to be sending fluid back up through the system and back into the reservoir, and so you need to be able to allow air escape for the fluid to fill it. Something else you want to be aware of is where your level is before you start compressing and while you're compressing, because if you're not careful, it can and will overflow. First step is going to be to loosen your lug nuts while the vehicle is still on the ground. As you lift up the vehicle, the tire is just going to spin when you try to loosen them. So you just basically want to break them free before you jack it up. Go around, do all of them. Go in. It's a good idea to go in a star pattern back and forth across the wheel, so the wheel constantly has even pressure and doesn't crack or anything. Right, next step is going to be to jack up your vehicle. You can check your owner's manual and it should show you a good place to lift it from. So you're going to slide your jack on underneath. Find a good place to slide it in. And drop it down. Up here is going to be get the rest of the lug nuts off. As you can see, we've gotten 4 of the 5 off. We're going to pull the 5th one off now. It should be nice and loose from how you left them before. With your wrench, loosen it up and pull it right off. Now you're going to be ready to pull the tire off. Alright, so as you can see here, we got a couple of grooves in the rotor. This was caused by the pad just wearing down. Typically, when this happens, you'll hear some squealing or just your brakes won't work very good anymore. The only symptom I had of this was the steering wheel would shake a little bit around 50, and so I pulled the wheels off the other day to see what the problem was, and turns out the pads were pretty much gone. So that's why we're changing them today. Alright, so now you're ready to take off the caliper so you can change the pads and the rotor. There's going to be 2 bolts holding the caliper on. You can see there's one on the top right here and one on the bottom. They're going to be the ones with the rubber boot right in back of them. There's a pin in there that allows the caliper to slide back and forth as the pads wear. So on the Jeep, it's going to be a 13mm. So throw that on your ratchet and pull them out. As you saw earlier, we have the grooves in the caliper here. They have corresponding grooves in the pad, so the pad's gripping on pretty tight onto the rotor. So, and you don't need to do this in most cases, but in this case, what we're going to do is take the C-clamp. There's a little space in the front of the caliper where you can see the pad. You're going to take one end of the C-clamp, put it on the pad, find a good spot with solid metal on the back of the caliper, and start tightening down the C-clamp. That's where we release some of the pressure, so the caliper will come loose and you'll be able to pull it off a lot easier. And there you go, there it is. Now what you want to do is either take a piece of wire and string it somewhere through the caliper and hang it from the vehicle, because you don't want to have tension on this rubber line. If it breaks, you're in trouble. You're going to have to replace that, and bleed your brakes and all that other fun stuff. But what I do, put it upside down, and set the caliper on top. So, if your rotors have been on the vehicle for a long time, they may be rusted on. At this point, on most vehicles, they should just pull straight off. The only thing holding them on is the wheel pressing up against it and the lug nuts tightening down. So if they don't pull straight off, what you're going to want to do is, get a hammer, kind of pound on it, try to break the rust loose, because it's going to be rust up along the hub right here, and just got to break it free. So right in here, next step, this is where you can see the brake pads slide. They sit on right here, so they slide up against these surfaces. You want to make sure these are cleaned up. These are flaky rust, so I'm just going to take a screwdriver and scrape them down, try to smooth them out so that there's a smooth surface for the brakes to ride on. Here we have our new rotor, brand new. It's in great shape, much better shape than the old one. Came with a lot of oil on it though to prevent rust, but seems pretty. I'd rather have a little rust than oil. So anyways, I'm gonna take some acetone, wipe it down, get the most of the oil off. And after you're done wiping it down, what you're gonna do is grab some brake cleaner and then spray off anything that the paper towel may have left behind. So just spray it right down. Alright, now we're going to be getting ready to put everything back together. So what we have here is brake caliper lube. So it helps when the caliper squeezes the pads and they grip the rotor. Put it on the surface where they slide, which is going to be these two spots right here. You want to put enough on so it obviously lubricates it, but you don't want to go too heavy on it so it doesn't end up somehow working its way onto the rotor, or else your brakes are pretty much useless. So you just take a little bit, squirt it out. You can just get this at your auto parts store in a little package. It goes very far. I've done many jobs with this package right here. Just take a little bit, put it on your finger, rub it on where the caliper is going to slide, and make sure you get an even coating, and be good to put it. Alright, now we're going to be taking the old pads off the caliper. For the outside one on this side, you're going to need to push in and pull up on it, get it out. I mean, depending on what part of the country you live in, Rust Belt, where you have winters, it might be harder to pull off, could be rusted together. As you can see, this is worn right down to the rivets. You can see all the rivets right here that hold the pad in place, and that's what was causing the grooves. Typically, these would make a very loud squealing noise, but surprisingly they didn't for me. So there you go. And so now, before you remove the inside pad, you're going to take the C-clamp again, clamp it, find a solid metal spot on the back of your caliper to brace it up against, and compress the piston right here, which is what squeezes when you push your brake pedal. That's what squeezes out and stops your vehicle. So take it and twist it in slowly, keeping an eye on your brake fluid reservoir, so make sure nothing starts spilling out on you. And once it's fully compressed, you can start putting the new ones on. Pull out the rear pad, and just pulls straight out. There you go. As you can see the rivets on here as well. I'll show you compared to a new pad. Big difference between that's what's been worn down over however many thousand miles I've had it on there. So these are what are going on now. They just snap into place where the old one was. Somehow. And then the other one on the outside. they're ready to go on. Got the new rotor, and throw it on. If you have any grease or anything on your hands, you want to make sure not to touch the rotor. Once that's on, take a couple lug nuts, just kind of hold it in place. Alright, as you can see, I picked up the caliper, lined up there's 2 slots on the bottom of the pads. That's another thing to make sure when you put the pads on, they're specific to the side of the vehicle. On the bottom, there should be 2 notches, almost like a C notch. And up here, it should only be half of the notch that's on the bottom. Should you can zoom in and see that. The reason is these will sit on the bottom and it will keep from kicking out, and then these will allow this to just pop right in with the caliper. So once you get those lined up, you want to make sure those two boots that the bolts held the caliper on originally, you want to make sure that those are pushed out all the way towards the inside of the vehicle so they can slide back on easily. So pull them out. It's a little force sometimes, but there you go. Now it's back in. The bolts for hold the calipers in place, right back in the rubber boot where they were originally. You can get a repair manual, and that will give you a list of torque specs, or maybe you can find it online somewhere, a forum or something. Find out what the torque piece do. So, get your torque wrench out and tighten them up. Alright, so we got the wheel back on, the vehicle lowered, and now we're torquing up the lug nuts to their final setting. You can find that also in the repair manual or online generally. Generally between 80 and 110 foot-pounds with the torque wrench. So now that we got that done, we're going to come over here, back over, and check the level of the brake fluid. As you can see, it's a little bit high, so we're going to take some out and make sure it's right by the full line.